and welcome to the Incomplete Guide to Film podcast, where we're learning filmmaking together. I'm your host, Alex Pinnell, and today we're going to be talking about the validity of entrepreneurship. This is the first episode purely based on the business side of filmmaking, so I'm really excited about it. So let's dive right in. So I have a friend. He's in an internship currently. And he recently was under review where they were talking about, he was talking about renewing his internship because he has to renew every year. They had him do a presentation on what his plans were post-internship. I'm not really sure why they did it, but, it's their policy. He had plans to, after the internship, if he hadn't renewed, which he has. But if he hadn't renewed, he was planning on going into business for himself. And this guy who was reviewing him, basically critiquing his little presentation, said, and I quote, that entrepreneurship isn't always viable, and went on to discourage him from being an entrepreneur, where he was suggesting that he needs to be in a job in a large company instead of going into business for himself. That entrepreneurship isn't a viable option. That being an entrepreneur won't make any money. So this podcast, I'm not going to mention anybody by name. But this is combating that mentality and giving anybody who comes across this themselves fuel to refute this argument. So first of all, I just want to say, if you think that entrepreneurship is not viable, I'm sorry that you don't have the guts to do something different. Everybody goes and works for a big company. Everybody goes and does a 9-to-5 job in a cubicle and reenacts the movie Office Space, where they just hate their job and they hate their life because that's 90% of their life, their job. One of the first questions that we ask when we meet somebody is, well, what do you do? If that's your passion and you don't want to, go in it for yourself, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But saying that entrepreneurship is not a viable option, that people who want to go into business for themselves, it's nearly impossible for them to find success, is patently untrue. It's an oversimplification of it. Every business that is a huge corporation now with global interests and name recognition across the country and even the world was a garage startup at one point. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've been doing this for about a year, so I'm pretty young in the cycle. So let me introduce you to a couple people who started out like me, who started out young, and they decided that they wanted to do something different. They didn't want to go work in someone else's business; they wanted to make their own. Let's start the furthest back in history that I'm going to go. And start with Cornelius Vanderbilt, who built New York Grand Central Station. Or Andrew Carnegie, who built the Eads Bridge. Or John D. Rockefeller, whose company continues to supply oil to the United States and abroad. Then let's go to Thomas Edison, who was instrumental in the discovery and application of electricity, and his one-time associate, but then rival, Nikola Tesla, who also was one of the fathers of the power grid as we know it. Then you get to Henry Ford, one of the biggest American companies, and we can move even further to Walt Disney, whose company is now one of the largest film companies in the world, and owns some of the most lucrative movie franchises of all time, and who's had a phenomenal influence on my generation's childhood. They're literally helping to raise the children of the future. This guy's company that he started out of nothing. Then let's go to Bill Gates. Bill Gates started Microsoft, and Steve Jobs started Apple, two of the largest tech companies in the world. They both started out in their garage. Everybody knows Steve Jobs' story because they won't stop making biopics of him. And Bill Gates was very much the same. They started building computers in their garage, and now they have more money than they know what to do with. Or how about Mark Zuckerberg, who started Facebook and became one of the youngest ever millionaires at the age of 24. All of these businesses, all of these huge companies started in their garage, started at nothing and built it up to what it is today. No one just dumps a huge Fortune 500 business into someone else's lap. So when you get down to it, entrepreneurship is viable. It's unlikely that you're going to hit the 1 in a million shot. That you're going to be Bill Gates, that you're going to be Steve Jobs, that you're going to be Walt Disney. But that doesn't mean that it's not viable. That just means that you're not going to be a millionaire, and that's fine. Not everybody gets to be a millionaire. And that's how it should work, because the people who become millionaires are the ones that go out and get it. So I hope I've given you guys some useful information and some fuel to combat this very damaging mindset of entrepreneurship being broken and something that only the millionaires can make money off of, and not really helpful for anybody. And I hope that some of you artists out there who aren't really thinking the business way about this stuff weren't too bored by this episode. I promise that on Wednesday there will be an episode more to your liking. All right, so that's the end of another episode. So, good day and good filmmaking. Hey guys, thanks for listening. I wanted to encourage you guys to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment on YouTube, or follow and leave me